Marjorie Taylor Greene removed social media posts amid scrutiny of past controversial comments. Republican Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene has removed dozens of Facebook posts from 2018 and 2019 in which she endorsed fringe conspiracy theories and repeatedly indicated support for executing prominent Democratic politicians. Searches of Greene's Facebook show the posts from 2018 and 2019 have been removed. Links saved by CNN's K-File during a review of hundreds of posts and comments from Greene's Facebook page are no longer available. Greene is facing backlash for her conspiratorial social media posts after CNN reported she indicated support for executing prominent Democrats in Facebook comments and videos. The freshman congresswoman from Georgia also deleted videos she posted on Facebook Live where she said House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is guilty of treason, and that she will suffer death or she'll be in prison for her treason. CNN reached out to Greene's office for comment on the removed posts but did not receive a response. Greene, who made the comments before running for Congress, posted a statement on her Twitter account on Tuesday in which she did not deny that she liked posts and replied to comments but claimed that many people have run her Facebook page over the years. "I've had teams of people manage my pages. Many posts have been liked. Many posts have been shared. Some did not represent my views," she wrote. A Facebook spokesman told CNN's K-File the posts were not removed by the company. Greene previously had posts removed for violating the company's community standards, the Facebook spokesman confirmed, in which Greene agreed with people who said the 2018 Parkland, Florida, shooting was a false flag operation. False flag refers to acts that are designed by perpetrators to be made to look like they were carried out by other individuals or groups. In a video that surfaced Wednesday, Greene is seen harassing Parkland shooting survivor and gun control activist David Hogg outside the Capitol. In the video from March 2019, she calls Hogg a coward and said he was paid to do this, repeating a malicious lie that Hogg's activism was paid for by billionaire philanthropist and Democratic donor George Soros. Survivors of the Parkland shooting and victims' families have called for Greene to resign. In a written statement to CNN, Greene said that the video was taken while she was in Washington, going from office to office in the Senate to oppose the radical gun control agenda that David Hogg was pushing. "In 11th grade, one of my fellow students took our school hostage with a gun he brought to our gun-free school," Greene said. "I understand that fear firsthand, and I will always work to protect our gun rights so that Americans can defend themselves and others against bad people intent to harm or kill them." Greene announced earlier this week that she would serve on the House Committee on Education and Labor. At a weekly press conference on Thursday, Pelosi harshly criticized House Republican leaders for assigning Greene to the committee, assigning her to the Education Committee when she has mocked the killing of little children at Sandy Hook Elementary School, when she has mocked the killing of teenagers in high school at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. What could they be thinking? Pelosi asked. Or is thinking too generous a word for what they might be doing? It's absolutely appalling. And I think the focus has to be on the Republican leadership of this House of Representatives for the disregard they have for the death of those children. AOC rejects Cruz support over Wall Street chaos. "You almost had me murdered," Democratic Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on Thursday accused Sen. Ted Cruz of trying to get me killed during the January 6 insurrection at the U.S. Capitol and called for his resignation from the Senate. After the Texas Republican appeared to agree with her on the need for an investigation into Robinhood following chaos on Wall Street. "I am happy to work with Republicans on this issue where there's common ground. But you almost had me murdered 3 weeks ago, so you can sit this one out," the New York Congresswoman wrote in a tweet directed at the Texas senator Thursday. "Happy to work with almost any other GOP that aren't trying to get me killed. In the meantime, if you want to help, you can resign," she continued. You haven't even apologized for the serious physical plus mental harm you contributed to, from Capitol Police and custodial workers to your own fellow members of Congress. In the meantime, you can get off my timeline and stop clout chasing. Thanks." CNN reached out to spokespersons for both Cruz and Ocasio-Cortez on Thursday afternoon. Ocasio-Cortez's comments to Cruz came as she discussed the news Thursday that Robinhood, a trading app, restricted trades on GameStop and other highly volatile stocks, blocking retail investors from buying those stocks but allowing Wall Street to. On Twitter, she called for an investigation into Robinhood's actions and said it was unacceptable, to which Cruz replied, "Fully agree," sparking the New York Congresswoman's ire. Cruz said later Thursday that Ocasio-Cortez's tweets amounted to partisan anger. "That's not healthy for our country." Those comments prompted Ocasio-Cortez to tweet, "What does he think the logical response to his lies should be? A hug? Maybe there's anger, BC. His actions deserve accountability." Supporters of former President Donald Trump breached the Capitol building on January 6 and attempted to stop Congress from certifying Joe Biden's electoral win, believing that the 2020 election was stolen from Trump. Some of the rioters sought out lawmakers like House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, ransacked their offices, and were caught on video making death threats against members and former Vice President Mike Pence. That day, just before the rioters stormed the Capitol, Cruz had objected to the certification of Arizona's 2020 elections result, despite no evidence supporting claims of voting irregularities and fraud. Cruz was one of the top congressional backers of Trump's baseless challenges to the election results before January 6. Ocasio-Cortez had previously called for Cruz's resignation in the wake of the January 6 Capitol attack, and for him to be expelled from the Senate if he does not step down. She said in an Instagram Live video earlier this month, many members of the House were nearly assassinated in the breach. It's just not an exaggeration to say that at all. I had a pretty traumatizing event happen to me," Ocasio-Cortez explained. "And I do not know if I can even disclose the full details of that event due to security concerns, but I can tell you that I had a very close encounter where I thought I was going to die." Last week, the Justice Department arrested Garrett Miller of Texas, who had allegedly participated in the Capitol attack and posted online death threats against Ocasio-Cortez and a U.S. Capitol Police officer. Miller allegedly tweeted, "Assassinate AOC," according to court documents. Ocasio-Cortez also told CNN's Chris Cuomo last week on primetime that a considerable number of lawmakers still don't yet feel safe around other members of Congress in the wake of the breach. The high-profile New York progressive congresswoman and the staunch Texas conservative have been at odds on many issues but had agreed on a ban on former lawmakers becoming lobbyists. McCarthy and Trump discuss Republicans' plans to win House majority at Florida meeting Thursday. Former President Donald Trump and House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy met Thursday at Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, Florida, where the two Republicans discussed strategy for winning the House majority in next year's midterms. According to a readout of the meeting provided by Trump's Political Action Committee Save America, they discussed many topics, number one of which was taking back the House in 2022, the statement read. President Trump's popularity has never been stronger than it is today, and his endorsement means more than perhaps any endorsement at any time. The statement described the meeting as cordial and highlighted a stronger than expected performance among key House GOP candidates, though Democrats maintained their House majority with a slimmer margin. McCarthy's visit comes at a tumultuous time for the Republican Party, following Trump's roll ahead of the January 6 deadly riot storming the Capitol that led to his second impeachment just days before he left office. 10 House Republicans voted to impeach Trump, and the Senate is expected to pick up the former president's trial next month. Still, All but 5 Republican senators voted earlier this week that such a trial was not constitutional, outlining just some of the divides in the party. As Democrats now control the legislative and executive branches, McCarthy released his own statement confirming Trump's account of the meeting, showing he's in lockstep with the former president. Today, President Trump committed to helping elect Republicans in the House and Senate in 2022, McCarthy said. A Republican majority will listen to our fellow Americans and solve the challenges facing our nation. Democrats, on the other hand, have only put forward an agenda that divides us, such as impeaching a president who is now a private citizen and destroying blue-collar energy jobs. For the sake of our country, the radical Democrat agenda must be stopped, he added. A united conservative movement will strengthen the bonds of our citizens and uphold the freedoms our country was founded on. McCarthy was also in Florida fundraising as the House is out this week, despite political pressure from some in the GOP that the party must move on from Trump. McCarthy is eyeing what will win him back the House and possibly catapult him to the speakership. CNN reported earlier Thursday that 2 sources told CNN that some people warned McCarthy not to go see Trump. A source familiar with the matter said it made McCarthy look weak. Another source close to McCarthy told CNN that the California Republican was told that he would look like he was crawling back to Trump, and that it would further isolate him from mainstream donors who want to move away from Trump. Since the early days of Trump's campaign, McCarthy stood by him, earning the nickname "My Kevin." Even in the last days of Trump's time as president, McCarthy joined a lawsuit that was struck down by the Supreme Court that sought to overturn the results of the election. Even after the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6, McCarthy voted to object to the election results. Politically, sources have told CNN that McCarthy is caught between Trump's fervent supporters in the party and the GOP conference members who think the attack on the Capitol was sedition, including the 10 House Republicans, such as GOP Conference Chair Liz Cheney of Wyoming, who voted to support Trump's second impeachment. The fallout has led to questions about McCarthy's leadership in his conference. As much as McCarthy cannot afford to lose support from members of the Freedom Caucus, he also can't lose the backing of members in frontline districts that could help him win back the majority. McCarthy has backtracked on Trump's role in the insurrection as recently as this week, when he was criticized at his most recent news conference for saying he didn't believe Trump provoked the insurrection. If you listen to what he said at the rally, after saying 2 weeks earlier that Trump bears responsibility. This story has been updated with additional developments Thursday. Fact check: Jim Jordan falsely claimed Biden ordered the release of all undocumented immigrants. President Joe Biden has already ordered significant changes to U.S. immigration policy, but he has not issued an order that Republican Ohio Representative Jim Jordan claims he did. Jordan said on Facebook and Twitter on Saturday that Biden issued a new order to release all undocumented immigrants. Similarly, Jordan said in a Monday interview with Fox News host Maria Bartiromo that Biden has decided he's going to release 14,000 illegals. 14,000 is the approximate number of people in immigration and customs enforcement detention around the country. Jordan's source for these assertions was a viral article on conservative website Breitbart News, which has been shared tens of thousands of times on Facebook alone, about an email sent on Thursday morning by an ICE official in Houston. The email included the words "release them all, immediately," but Breitbart and then Jordan took the words way out of context. Facts first. Neither Biden nor his administration has ordered the release of everybody in ICE detention. ICE confirmed to CNN that the viral claim is inaccurate. The Department of Justice said in a Monday court filing that certain immigrants recently released by ICE in Texas were people particularly vulnerable to harm from COVID-19, who have special pandemic-era protections under a court order from last year. The "release them all immediately directive in Houston, which was rescinded in another internal email the next day, was about these high-risk detainees in particular. An ICE official said in yet another internal email, "We don't have the full story about what happened with these Texas releases or with the email exchange. But it's already clear that there is no basis for the claim that Biden has mandated a mass release of every single person in ICE facilities across the U.S." ICE said in a statement that it continues to make custody determinations on a case-by-case basis. An ICE official who spoke to CNN on condition of anonymity confirmed explicitly that there is no Biden order to release everyone. A spokesman for Jordan did not immediately respond to a request for comment. It's worth noting that Fox News host Tucker Carlson contradicted Jordan's claim 3 days before Jordan made his false claim on Bartiromo's show. Carlson, who obtained the Houston email before it was released in court, told his audience that the Biden administration's own policy memo had not itself called for the instant release of everyone in ICE detention. The email chain. Here's a more detailed explanation of the ICE email exchange. The Thursday email that sparked the controversy was written by an assistant officer in charge of enforcement and removal operations in ICE's Houston field office, whose name was redacted in the Justice Department court filing. The email said that they needed to stop removing immigrants from the country by midnight. Biden's administration had ordered a 100-day deportation freeze to take effect no later than Friday, and then continued, "Check the HRD at 1,300 hours for new review decisions. Release them all, immediately." Contrary to the Breitbart article, that did not mean that all undocumented immigrants around the country, or even at any Houston facility, were to be released immediately. Rather, according to another internal email released by the Justice Department in court, HRD means high-risk detainees, specifically detainees at high risk for COVID-19. This Friday email, written by an ICE assistant director whose name was also redacted, explained that the high-risk detainees are Freyhat cases. For Abdallah Freyhat is the lead plaintiff in the lawsuit that led a judge to order ICE last year to identify, monitor, and consider the release of detainees at elevated risk of severe harm from the coronavirus. The Friday email said that ICE had been keeping some high-risk people in detention because their removal was imminent. After Biden's freeze prevented these imminent deportations, however, ICE had to decide whether to keep the people in detention or let them go within the U.S. Releasing people from detention does not mean they will never be deported. The Biden administration has not publicly explained how it wants his deportation freeze to interact with the provisions of the pandemic-related court order. An internal ICE email sent Friday afternoon told the sender of the Thursday, "Release them all, immediately," email to retract this directive immediately. This retraction email, signed FOD, likely field office director, said supervisors should follow the Biden administration's freeze memo as closely to the letter as possible. The memo did not say anything about immediately releasing immigrants at high risk from COVID-19, and that operational guidance is being developed and will be issued in the coming days. 4 days later, this Tuesday, a federal judge put the deportation freeze on temporary hold. This car maker says it topped 300 miles per hour once before, but it's not so easy to do it again in October. A small U.S. automaker called SSC North America claimed its 1,750 horsepower Toyota supercar had gone more than 300 miles an hour, breaking official world speed records for a street-legal passenger car. It wasn't long before bloggers and automotive journalists began questioning the video showing the supposed record run. And while SSC did not back down from its claim that its car actually hit 331 miles per hour, it admitted that there had been problems with the synchronization and timing in its video proof. So SSC's founder and CEO Jared Shelby said they would do it all over again. Except this time around, achieving that speed is proving much more difficult. On Wednesday, SSC announced it had gotten the car up to an average top speed of 283 miles an hour during 2 runs. But the attempt, completed on January 17, was made in much more difficult conditions than before. The car was driven by an amateur, rather than a professional, driver. And, for that reason, the car's power was reduced. The company is going to keep trying, though, Shelby said. Its next attempts will begin in the spring, he said, with the car running at full power through the entire run. The $1.9 million Tuatara has butterfly doors and a turbocharged V8 engine. SSC says the model's aerodynamic design was inspired by fighter jets and took more than a decade of research and development. The Tuatara is named after a lizard from New Zealand, which got its name from a Maori word for peaks on the back. The Tuatara's most recent run could already count as a record. But what constitutes as a record for world's fastest production car remains disputed, with no international sanctioning body recognized, and no official definition of what constitutes a production car. Swedish supercar maker Koenigsegg claimed the fastest production car record for its Agera RS, which hit 278 miles per hour on a Nevada highway in 2017. A modified Bugatti Chiron went 305 miles per hour on a test track in Germany. But that car was considered to be a pre-production prototype. The SSC Tuatara's first attempt to break the record last fall was made on a closed-off stretch of highway in the Nevada desert outside Las Vegas. SSC is making its new attempts on a former Space Shuttle runway in Florida, called Johnny Bomer Proving Grounds. The former landing strip is now used to test cars at extremely high speeds. But, instead of 7 miles of highway in which to get to more than 300 miles per hour, the SSC Tuatara now has just 2.3 miles. That requires different, more aggressive techniques if there is any hope of passing 300 miles per hour. During the latest attempt in January, the SSC Tuatara was being driven by its owner, Larry Kaplan, a dentist and founder of Docs Health, a company that provides healthcare for large organizations. To get the car up to speed, Kaplan had to keep the gas pedal pressed to the floor for as long as 50 seconds. The car reached 244 miles an hour in under a mile, according to SSC. Larry pulled off a run that was far more difficult, at least by a factor of 4, than what we attempted in Nevada, Shelby said in an email. Because Kaplan isn't a trained race car driver, the Tuatara's power was reduced using the car's onboard computers to just 1,500 horsepower most of the time. Only on the last run, and only in 7th gear, was the car allowed to produce its full 1,750 horsepower, said Shelby. I was thoroughly impressed, said Shelby during an interview, after we got him up to 250 miles an hour. I looked at the in-car camera of him during these runs, and he was so calm, no drama at all. He looked very composed and I thought, we can do this? With that bit of full power. The car's highest one-way top speed was 286 miles per hour and its combined average top speed going both ways was 283 miles per hour. The company said SSC has stood by its claim that its car reached a speed of 331 miles per hour and an average top speed of 316 miles per hour going in 2 opposite directions in its original attempt. Record-keeping bodies like Guinness require speed records to be recorded in both directions to ensure that wind or inclines are not a factor. But with serious questions having been raised about its video proof, Shelby still felt it had to be done again to answer the critics. Shelby is not related to Carroll Shelby, the famed founder of Shelby American, the company that makes Shelby Cobra sports cars and Shelby Mustangs. I think this production car speed record is all marketing, Shelby said. And this is kind of an internal engineering design challenge where we want our customers, the Tuatara customer, to know that they have purchased the car that is fastest in the world.